Welcome to the Invincible Innovation Show, the podcast for changemakers. Each week, I talk to the most fascinating entrepreneurs and innovation leaders about innovation, strategy, and design. Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about the future of food, VC investment, the Israeli tech scene, and so much more. Welcome to Invincible Innovation Live Show. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm Adi Mazor Kario, product innovation and value creation expert, and I have a very, very special guest, Zohar. Hi, Zohar.
Hi.
So happy to see you. Zohar Pernat is the founder and CEO of Pernat Capital Ltd. And he has so much to tell us. And we just started to talk about a few of the things we're going to discuss today. It's going to be really interesting. We're live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, and you're really invited to join the discussion and ask questions. And I know we have so much to talk about general, like tech and VC and funding, but I want to start with the food tech because it's really interesting for me. It's always been interesting because food tech is not exactly high tech, right? It's a manufacturing in many cases. And as a vegan, I'm always really interested to see if it's going to be my direction or other directions. So it's always like personally interesting for me. So could you tell us about the future of our food and what do you see in the industry and where it's going for?
Well, I see that you start from the end, right?
Yeah. But this is like the thing that I wanted to ask. So I'm starting, but I'm sure we're going to have lots
right
of
at the
questions.
end. But I think you touched probably the most important point, the most important part of the industry itself. We could talk about it more later on, but I think that's the most important part. It's to balance the expectation between what we think about food tech, between what investors think about food tech, what the industry think about that, and what the end consumer, right? Because in opposed to all tech industries, someone at the end must buy it, right? It must
and eat it.
Buy it and more than once, right?
Yeah.
It has to be tasty, it has to be good, it has to be nurtured. You have to love it.
You need to consume it. It's part of your daily life. It couldn't be like, I liked it once and that's it.
If you like it once, it's a disaster, right? You have to, it's a repeat. You have to repeat, go to the supermarket, order it online or whatever. And that's probably the most important part, to balance the expectation between what people think about food tech, right? I think the first part is what people don't understand. It's a completely different industry. It's a completely different industry. The food industry, it's more conservative, it's slow, it's heavy, it thinks different. If you compare it to the IT, if you compare it to the cyber, or even to more conservative tech companies, as we know it as ed tech, has been around for a while. It's completely different. People have to understand that the decision-making process behind every product could take more than a year. Just to think behind that. It's not plug and play. You don't download the software or whatever. I can tell you from my personal experience. In one of our activities here in Israel, we represent Unilever. And Unilever, is one of the largest player in the world, not just in food, in home care and personal care. People have to understand that just to get the idea behind it and try to gather all the professional behind that, it could take, even just the conference call behind it could take three months.
Wow.
So people have to understand that the pace of this specific industry is completely different. It's going to take more time than we think. People have to have more patience behind that. And I think that brings me to maybe one of the most important part of issues behind food tech. It's the people behind it. We haven't talked about it in the past, but I think in opposed to other tech companies, most of the founders come from the universities or from the labs. They are not business people. They look at the world completely different. They like the white suit or something like that they wear at the labs. They like to deal with small stuff, but it's very difficult for them to understand how the business world works.
Yeah.
And in Israel, especially in Israel, I think there is a limited number of management professional that could leverage their professional experience into the food tech industry. I can name you. I wanted to start with that, but I came across the food tech industry. I think it was something like 5 years ago. In coincidence, I was scrolling around LinkedIn, and I saw an ad from the Kitchen Tech Hub. It's connected to Strauss. It's located in Ashdod. They're looking for a business analyst part-time. And so I thought about that. It could be interesting, but just talked to a couple of friends of mine. They connected to me to Amir Zeitman. We can talk about him later, but I think he's one of the most important part of the Israeli food tech ecosystem. Is the most powerful influencer behind that. He started that with Jonathan, the CEO of the Kitchen Food Tech Hub. I think it was 6 years ago. He can bring the unique capabilities of experience of management and the connection with food. And I think we could talk more about that, the balance in the expectation and how food tech startup could leverage the amazing idea that we have here. Really, I think Israel you can take Israel or Netherlands, I think Amsterdam and San Francisco. These are probably the most vibrant ecosystem of the food tech hub in the world. You can add New York, but you can add New York all the time. Really.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. But what you're saying is two things. It's slower because the industry and the players are slower. Like Unilever is a very big corporate, and they're moving really slow in the decisions about what they're going to fund and what they're interested in. But what you're saying, it's more than that. The fact that we're creating something that someone needs to consume and changes behavior really substantially. It's not like, I'm trying to reduce eating less meat for one day and that's it. Maybe I'll change it like in half a year, I will go keto or whatever. It's more than that. I really need to like it and consume it in a way that it's part of my diet from now on, which is not that easy, right? So it's like three levels. One is like the industry. Second is the development of these kinds of initiatives. And the third one is the change in the consumers that is needed in order to really be successful there.
Exactly. And I think we can talk a bit about how it started, where it started, this food tech industry. When someone talk about food tech, someone is looking for innovation or some unique technology. If you compare it to other industries like machine learning, AI, data lakes, or whatever, it started with a couple of guys mixing ingredients in the kitchen. And they called it food tech, but it's not really food tech, right? It's just a new look, a new vision about how we consume our food. And they started it. We're trying to bring new products to the market. For yourself, you're vegan, right?
Yeah.
And everybody's looking for new products that you consume that would be tasty. It could replace the food or the meat or that they're consuming today. So it started not as a food tech, but now it's completely different. And I hope the whole cultured meat or cultured milk that the main character or the main features of the food tech industry today would change the expectation that we talked about. It could go a bit faster because it's real tech. It's a combination of more than just a couple of ingredients mixed around in the kitchen. There are a couple of Israeli names, like just for the example, Imaginary. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the company.
No. Great name.
They've done something quite unique. They combine the issue of food tech and real tech. They have a joint venture with the Tel Aviv University, and they're using their platform for the AI and machine learning to learn more about the product itself and make it better and faster for for the end market, for the end consumer. So I think that this combination of these joint ventures could help the industry to accept new products and new features or new snacks or milk or whatever faster, sooner, for the benefits of the consumer, right? Because these companies, Unilever, PepsiCo, Mondelez, Coca-Cola, the whole industry are looking for new growth engines. They're growing 2%, 3% a year according to the population growth. They're always looking for new products, new growth engines. I'm quite sure that they haven't decided yet. You asked me before what is the main power behind the industry. I'm not sure that the industry decided. You have the Impossible Meat and all the industry behind that, Beyond Meat. I'm quite sure that's not where we're going, because that's become a commodity. You go to a supermarket in the US, you can buy a vegan hamburger from Cargill for, I think, 30% out of the cost of Beyond Meat. And it's not that different. People are looking for something completely different, and I'm not sure that we're there already. But I think the culture industry, the milk and the meat and the chicken, the whole chicken industry could make a change, and seafood, of course. A lot of advertising and buzz behind the printed salmon or the cultured salmon in the last few weeks.
Yeah, I saw that. It looks good. Did you taste it?
No, not yet. I've tasted that was, I think, a company named Plantish. I tasted someone else, but I think it looks, at least from first sight, it looks amazing. Yeah.
It looks good. So you mentioned a few trends, and we talked about changing the meat industry and in chicken and in fish. So what are the main trends that we're talking about? Is it all like going to plant-based or not? Do we have additional trends like reducing sugar or making it more healthy or less fast food and more consumed by at home or whatever?
I think that if we had the same conversation about 2 or 3 years ago, it was all about plant-based. The plant-based industry was on an amazing hype behind that. But I think that people learn to understand that the plant-based industry is more connected to the ingredients industry. And if we're looking for something completely different, we're looking for something with real technology behind that, real company behind that. And that's the cultured meat or the cultured milk. And you mentioned, by the way, the issue of sugar. It's not that sexy, by the way.
Yeah. And it's less tasty.
Tasty.
You cannot reduce sugar and it will be the same thing. I think that when you're changing meat, I'm eating something different. It's not the same thing with less sweet.
Exactly. But at least from my perspective, it's much more important, because the issue of sugar is, I think, if you talk about the food industry, it's one of the largest factors for diabetes. And I think if the industry would look at it from a different perspective, I think it's one of the most important parts that they should deal with it. But you were completely right. I'm helping a company named Better Juice. They're reducing up to 80% out of the sugar from natural juices. It could be for orange juice, grapefruit, whatever, as long as it's natural. But it's less sweet. So people trying to avoid that and trying to add replacement that are not healthy for you. At least from my experience, it takes time to adopt yourself to the new product. It's less, but the issue of sugar reduction, I believe that it's one of the main and major factor of the industry that they should start looking at. But I think if we take just a couple of minutes about, I'm coming from the capital market industry. I spent more than 25 years in the capital market side. I just moved from the capital market, from the public side to the private side a couple of years ago, 5 years ago. But it's still interesting. So I think we talked about earlier about the connection between the public side and the private side of the market in terms of valuation and the way that people look at the industry. I think it's important to mention that because that's the fuel behind the industry.
And just a few words just to explain. Public is like the stock market. Private is when I am as a person going to evaluate a company and saying like that's my evaluation. It's not connected to the price of what will be their stock, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. When we look at it's not you as a person. I hope for you.
No.
But it's mostly venture capital firms, private equity firms, or corporate venture capital firms. It could be, but the main difference behind that is that, in opposed to other industries or tech industry, the food tech industry started the funding started from the corporate side itself, not from the financial side. So Cargill, Unilever, Coca-Cola, Nestle, for example, all of these guys were the first initial funding source for those companies. So they when someone starts something, it builds something according to their needs, right? If Nestle needs something and they're willing to pay for that, they sculpture and sculpt the company itself according to their needs. So it started from the commercial side, but all of a sudden, I think it was something like 3 or 4 years ago, small niche US venture capital firms joined the party. They started funding new startups, especially in the US and in Israel. But I think it started really slow and small. Something like seed investment or even pre-seed investment, but it started to change the industry itself. And then we saw some small to mid-sized firms that they are more from the general side. So they don't invest in a specific philosophy or specific theme or niche. They invest statistically all over the industry. They entered the food tech industry. And we thought, I think that was one of your questions, the environmental side, the impact side. You have a lot of impact funds, but there are still small proportion out of the industry itself, unfortunately. And now the party is full on, right? Everybody is part of the party. Everybody wants to be a part of that, to take a big chunk or a big piece out of those companies. And we saw the valuation in the last 6 months skyrocketing. Just yesterday we saw...
Not only in food tech, like we're talking about food tech, but in general, right?
In general, it's all about unicorn, right? When Waze was sold to Google, I think it was 10 years ago, it was amazing, $1 billion. But now all of a sudden, $1 billion is a 2-year company, something like that.
Right.
You just have to be a cyber company with an experienced entrepreneur. That's it. You have a unicorn.
Yeah, like Wiz.
For example, And I think, although in the food tech industry it's a bit different, we just started with unicorns, but Redefine Meat just raised $130 million yesterday. It was announced, and Remilk raised 220 a couple of weeks ago. And you can Aleph Farms, they're part of the Kitchen Tech Hub, raised 120. It was 6 months ago.
Wow.
And
so how do you explain these amounts of money invested in something which is initially a small, very, very small idea company? So
I think it's connected again to the public markets. And look at companies are looking for high returns for the same investment, and the alternative they have behind it. Right now, the cost of money or interest rate is negative or close to negative, and they're looking for new and innovative ideas that could generate more revenue, more return, higher return in a shorter amount of time. And actually, the good ideas are very small. number of good ideas are very small.
Yeah. So you're thinking it's not going to live up to the expectations, that there are very, very high expectations as we hear. So what would happen to an entrepreneur that gets $220 million and the expectations are so high? What would happen in the next year or three? What do you think would happen?
Well, I think that's the $220 million question.
Yeah.
And you as a professional consultant to those guys knows from previous experience what usually happens. You have 220, it looks a lot, right? It sounds a lot. It is a lot. But the problem is that you have to, in order to raise this kind of amount, you build some kind of milestones that you have to accomplish in the next 3, 4, 5 years, even in the next year. And you're trying to push harder in order to accomplish these milestones. And you add new employees, and you buy companies, and you buy technologies, and all of a sudden your burn rate is from 1 million a month to 20 million a month because you have 70 employees. And you have to build up a new structure or a new organization, and all of a sudden 220 is not a lot, and you need much more in order to support the growth that you need. And that's exactly the gap between and the balance, the expectation of these investors, that most of them, as we talked, it started with the commercial side, but now we're dealing with the guys that are not familiar with the industry. And they think, listen, 1 year, 2 years from now, we have a running company. It's not going to happen. It takes even the technology itself, the scale up of the technology itself, the pilots behind it. It takes much more time. And then they realize they have to put much more money inside. 220 is it's like a joke for them.
Yeah.
And we saw that in the past. We saw that in 2008. We saw it in the tech bubble. We saw it with beautiful and amazing ideas that we had here in Israel, even with better places, everybody knows that.
Yeah, we went to the north on this weekend, like snow, everybody needs to go there. So, and I saw this, they have these structures built for better place, and it's just stuck there, and it stays there, it's a small building that is for the electricity car, and you see it, and I know that what's going on right now with Elon Musk and his company, and it's like it was a great idea, but it didn't really succeed, and so many people had these expectations from I think Shai Agassi, right?
Yeah. He is a real vision guy, right?
Right.
He was the head of his time, and the only difference between him and Elon Musk is Elon Musk's ability to raise money.
Yeah.
Well, Elon Musk, just a couple of, I don't know, I won't say months or a couple of years ago, was on the verge of bankruptcy.
Yeah.
He needed $1 billion right now just for the cash flow itself. And his abilities to raise money from the public side, from the stock market, is unbelievable. He is a visionary, of course. He's amazing, blah, blah, blah. That's obvious. But the only difference between them, that he was ahead of his time, like 10 years ahead of his time, and the ability to raise money. And that takes us to the previous point, balancing the expectation between the investors and the food tech industry, and understand that it will take time. Don't raise too much money right now, at least from my perspective. Build the company or the structure behind that, pace after pace. It makes much more sense because people think that, listen, you can raise money when you can. That's the quote. That's the saying. But I just read a book a couple of weeks ago. Raise enough money in order to bring yourself to the next round stronger and build trust with the investor itself. I think that's the most important part. It's going too fast, too high, with some of the industry of the investor are not the professional or the experienced people behind that. It could lead to a couple of disasters. That's what I think.
Yeah. Like it's like when people win the lottery. If you get a very very high amount, most of them in like 2 years, 3 years, they will go back even worse than what they were in the past. And you just indicated the entrepreneurs in food tech are people from university, and sometimes going from university to the business and going it from there really really fast to somewhere, it's like you need to adjust it and to get better and maybe bring the right people to accomplish what it's hard for you to accomplish. And it takes time to build this. And I see startups, they got funding and they started to put people into the company, and it takes time for them to work together, right? It's not like, yeah, we're bringing 100 developers. Yeah, it doesn't work this way. They need to establish the connection, the way they collaborate, and the methods. It takes time. It's not like out of the box you bring them and just plugging them into the company.
Mhm.
So I
You,
guess
you just answer my question. You asked me about the 220. I wanted to ask you as a professional consultant, if you deal with startups that all of a sudden receive that kind of amount of funding,
yeah.
they go around adding new professional to the team, right? It takes time. It's
Yeah.
people behind it, right?
Yeah, and making good decisions take time. It's not like, I think that in Israel we're working really fast and we're so proactive, but sometimes it doesn't mean that it's the right thing. Sometimes not doing something is a good decision, and in Israel it's like inconceivable. Not doing something is a good decision. I had one of the talks that I had in the past. It was someone who's talking about decision making, and he said that not making a decision is something that is like in the business world. It's like you're not making a decision right now. You're not doing proactively something. And sometimes, yeah, they just need to really understand what they're going to build and how they're going to do it, and do it in stages instead of like running. And sometimes when you're running, you sometimes fall. But I think that when we're talking about tech in general, this is for sure right. But in food tech, because I think it's manufacturing, it's not like a virtual machine that you're building here. It's not like a software. It's something that is tangible, right? And you need to create it, and you need manufacturers, and you need a way to transport it, and you need to sell it, and you need to market it. And there's so many things in additional to your tech, which is just the beginning of what's going to be successful here. And so it's like more barriers to the success. It's like a bit similar to what we have in medical tech, medtech, medical health.
Yeah, I agree.
There are so many restrictions, other restrictions, not like in food tech.
The medtech is from the regulatory side.
Yeah.
Although the food tech has some regulatory side, but not, you can't compare it to the medtech industry. But I think you're completely right. People don't understand that it's not a plug and play. You can't download the software. You have to even get a real site, a facility to manufacture it, the logistics behind that. You talked about the decision-making process. People don't understand that that's probably the most important part. In the whole industry, it involves so many people, so many amount of companies behind that ship the product itself, that produce it, that they make the QA for it, the facility behind the real estate. You have to find the real estate for the pilot itself, the connection. It's so difficult, and and you cannot compare it. Cannot compare it to other industry, unfortunately. And you cannot compare it in terms of valuation, in terms of product, in terms of even the shelf life. Okay, just for the example, if you download the software, you don't have to think about how long it's going to be in the fridge, right?
Yeah.
The companies have to think about how many months it's going to be on the shelf life itself. If people buy it, if you shipped it in refrigerated vessel or something like that, it's so complicated, so many details. It's they need help. By the way, we haven't talked about it, but most of the VC funds of the investor itself support their portfolio companies, especially in other industry, because they know it well. if someone sold a cyber company or an ad company, or it could be even a mobility companies, people have experience with that. The experience within the food tech is practically zero. Practically zero. If you compare it to other industry, 5 years is nothing. And the investor that invest in those company would like to say, listen, we're much more than investor. We have offices in New York and we have offices in San Francisco. We know the industry, blah, blah, blah. But in the end of the day, when the entrepreneur takes up the phone or sends an email, they don't have the right answers to those questions. They don't have the right experience. And those guys return again for the Unilever of the industry, for the Coca-Cola and the PepsiCo and the Mondelez for the same answers. And again, they give them the answers that Mondelez need, right? They want.
Yeah.
And,
What they want.
Yeah, and the way they shape the startup itself goes to a million directions. So it's very important for this decision-making process, for the support from the investor itself, and to shape the organization behind it. Part of that, the whole fundraising issue that we talked about, they told us, listen, we're going to a massive campaign of M&A, right? We're going to buy and acquire new companies. It could be in Germany, it could be in the US, we don't care. So instead of internal R&D, we're going to buy new companies, and that's the way that we're going to accomplish the milestone that we promised. But you as a professional, it's the combination of different people from different mentality, from different countries. It's going to be extremely different.
Yeah, of course.
And again, I don't want to be a part of it.
Yeah, but like in general, the statistics says that about 98% of startups fail. Like that's the statistics. So we're not like surprising anyone, I guess. But I wanted to ask you
I think these. By the way, I think these statistics are connected to a mature industry that had some failure in the past. But if we look at the food tech industry, I think the rates are a bit higher. If it could
higher.
go higher than
if it could go 99.9. So
the whole food tech industry started with a couple of small entrepreneurs. It could be in Brooklyn, in San Francisco, whatever, that manufacture something from themselves. It started from beer or chocolate or something like that, small shops. They evolved to a massive company. So I completely agree. But again, we're good times. We have to celebrate.
Yeah, good times, for sure. Good times is like, but I wanted to ask you, you mentioned like San Francisco, Amsterdam, and Israel. And I wanted to ask you, what do you think Israel, we're not good in manufacturing. That's it. Like we don't have manufacturers that are so successful, surely not international coming from Israel. So it doesn't, like, how does it match up? Because we are not that good in manufacturing. I guess that our academies are not more, professional than other academies for this professional. So why here?
I think that's a great question. Usually when someone asks about the Israeli tech industry, they direct them to the intelligent unit in the army.
Yeah,
right?
In the army. Yeah,
it's connected to the army, but it has no connection to the intelligent units of the army. And it's, as you said, it's not connected because we have no background or history about the food industry. We have small food industry, that tried to support the Israeli new state a couple of decades ago. I think we talked about it in the past in one of the podcasts that we have. I think it's something like 6 months ago with the guys from the US. I don't remember the name. We talked about the Israeli chutzpah, right?
Yeah, chutzpah.
The nature of the Israeli entrepreneur. But again, the Israeli academy with the Hebrew University, and you have the Department of Agriculture in Rehovot. The combination of the Israeli nature, the chutzpah that we talked about, and these specific academies, I think that's the root. That's where it started. That's where it all started. But again, it's not enough, because, as you said, you have amazing academies and industry in the US, in Chicago, or in the Netherlands, and whatever. But what makes us different? I think it's the drive, the ambitions behind it, to push the limits. As a vegan, I think Israeli has one of the highest vegan rates.
Yeah, the highest compared to the in percentage. It's not like total, of course. Yeah.
I think one of the main point is that people started to look for new products that they consume for themselves.
Yeah.
And if the percentage here in Israel, and the combination between the character and the universities and the academy, and that people are trying to look for new products for themselves, I think that's the part. But again, you can say it connected to the cherry tomato, right? I think that they were invented here, and the netafim. Although we don't have any history of agriculture here in Israel, netafim and the kibbutzim behind them. It's really hard to pinpoint the exact moment or the exact reason why it happened here in Israel. But by the way, I think if we talked about the kitchen FoodTech hub, it was the first one here in Israel. The support of the Israeli economy, of the Israeli government, is highly important. The Israeli Innovation Authority played a massive contribution in this environment. They took the whole risk at the beginning. Strauss gave something, a couple of thousand shekels, hundreds of thousands of shekels, but the government itself took the whole risk, and they pushed the industry. They changed the industry, and they shaped it as it looks today. But we can add the Volcanic Institute. You're familiar with them?
Yeah.
They have a lot of years of experience. Yeah, exactly. A lot of years of experience. But again, it was more from the research side.
Yeah. It's strange when you think about the main scientist of Israel. I had a talk, one of my previous chapters was with Orna Berry. She was the head scientist of Israel, and she said, and she told the story of how did it begin, and how is it right now, and what they've done in order to do so, to make the financial economy of Israel more stable. They decided to go for this kind of way of working, which many other more established European countries are coming back to Israel and trying to do it right now, which is a bit later, 40 years, 30 years later. But I think that it's even more interesting in the context of coming from the academy, because most of our entrepreneurs are not coming from the academy. Most of them, they're coming from the private sector, they're coming from the army, they're coming from whatever they know, and they're trying to do what, have the most motivation, the highest ideas that they could just try. And coming from academy is very, very strange in all of I think not only in Israel, because the personality of somebody who's a researcher is so different from an entrepreneur, is doing things business way of thinking. And it's strange that this is the first time that I hear about someone coming from the academy. Maybe you could say Mobileye inventor, he came from academy, right? But that's the only thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah, he's one of a kind. He's one of a kind. He has the
capability. It's only one person.
He has the capability of being an entrepreneur, and from the research side, from the academy side, most of them doesn't have it. It's even from the basic situation. These guys would like to stay backstage, even with when I escort them or walk with them or go with them to enter to a VC meeting. They would rather stay in the lab. They don't want to be a part of that. It's very frustrating for them, the whole procedure of fundraising itself. So that's exactly. We started with the issue that the FoodTech industry has lack of professional business people, and that's the reason why when you see someone that could do both things, that is exceptional, that's the reason why the company is so flourish and so successful, and it has the capability of going and scale up nationwide. It could go to the US or whatever, but these are most of the time you can't see them.
Yeah.
That's the reason, by the way, that a lot of people from the industry itself, from Unilever, from Coca-Cola, from Nestle, are joining the FoodTech industry, trying to add from their experience and their knowledge and their connection. They're helping a lot.
Yeah, because in their own companies, in the internal innovation teams, they have these people, their own researchers, and they have the business people, and they will go and get the funding from the CEO and then from the C-level. They have these like levels of people who are doing it within the company. It's usually not the same people in the innovation team going and doing it. And when you're an entrepreneur, you need to do both. You need to do this and this and this. You don't have any other opportunity. Just
that's the reason, by the
else.
way, these multinational corporates understood that they have to take the innovation side from the external, take it external.
It's extremely difficult
it's extremely difficult to innovate within the company itself, because they have the products. They don't have to take. They don't like to take this risk behind it. Someone else, they will take the risk. They will be a part of the industry, the ecosystem. You see most of them either have an accelerator or a VC or a hub or something like that. They're trying to learn from the industry. We talked at the beginning of the conversation about business intelligence. All of those guys has scouters here in Israel. They're doing the same job for them as a business intelligence from the business intelligence side, trying to learn what would be the next feature or the next product or the next design or whatever, preparing them for the next stage.
Yeah. But you mentioned that it's hard for them to take risks, but it's more than that. Even if they do decide to take the risk, it's very hard for them to move fast and to change things and to really innovate massively within their company, because, as you said, they're very traditional. They're moving very, very slow. They have these people that they are very good for being excellent at what they're doing, but not doing things really, really differently, and therefore it's harder for them to do so, I guess.
I agree.
So we are almost done. I have like tons of questions that I didn't have time to ask, but I would ask this: like, if you had a leader of one of these companies, let's say Coca-Cola, coming to you, what would be the number one tip you would give him in order to innovate better in what you learned from our experience as very young, innovative FoodTech nation?
That's a difficult question, I have to say. I would say do things differently. So when I say do things differently, don't go to the obvious. Don't go to the culture side, meat or the milk or whatever. Look for it, because it looks like it's a very crowded neighborhood. A lot of companies behind that. Someone would. I'm not sure if the winner takes it all, right? If a specific company will dominate the industry, but it's already quite crowded. Unless you already have some kind of a relationship with one of them, look differently. Look elsewhere. We talked about the issue of sugar reduction. I think that's the next big issue, especially if you're talking about a beverage company. That's a main problem, a main pain for these guys. Look over there and try to find it's much more than the solution itself. Trying to find and nurture the right person or the right people or the right team behind that, because otherwise you're just going to have an amazing idea standing over there without any usage. So again, don't go to the obvious, don't go to the crowded scene. Look for something unique, something else, and look for the best team that you can find, because ideas you have all around the place. You can I hear about new ideas almost on a daily basis.
Right.
But it's very difficult to find the right team that could manage the expectation that we talked about, and understanding that it's a different environment, different situation, especially if you're coming from traditional tech.
Yeah, of course. So I want to thank you for joining me. It's been really, really interesting. And I would ask, like, if somebody wants to contact you and ask you some questions and hear more about what you do, where would they find you?
Yeah, first of all, we haven't talked about what I do.
Right.
And I thought that would be something like 20 minutes out of the conversation.
Yeah, I have like lots of questions related to
personal
that.
branding. Everybody talks about personal branding, but I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to
totally
connect.
Right.
Yeah, feel free to connect. I'm on LinkedIn. I approve everyone. And if anyone needs help or any support, not just in FoodTech, but in fundraising for startups, feel free again. And it was my pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. Maybe we should do it again, and then I'll give you more time for what we had like in mind. And to all you change makers out there, thank you for joining me. And if you want to learn more about what I do, go to invincibleinnovation.com. And I'll see you next week with another innovative, insightful talk. See ya. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I'm Adi Mazor Kario, and you've been listening to the Invincible Innovation podcast. Make sure to visit our website, invincibleinnovation.com, where you can learn more about our programs and my book, Innovating Through Chaos. I'll be waiting for you next week in our next episode. Thank you for listening.